Imagine a world where personal metadata is considered part of one's legacy left behind for future generations to remember and reflect upon. In our daily life, we generate vast amounts of data, including metadata, that speaks to the patterns of our consumption, time, sequence, and action. This metadata, when presented with care, can provide intriguing glimpses into a person's daily routines and experiences. But what happens to this data when we die? In this research project, we explore how people might come to commemorate a person's legacy through the location metadata left behind by digital products like Google Maps. This exploration is synthesized into the prototype Anekdota, which presents location metadata as traces to be investigated, followed, and experienced firsthand. Our research contributes to SIGCHI by suggesting what people might desire from metadata as a form of personal legacy. In recent years, there has been a growing interest in SIGCHI to consider the intersection of digital data, death, and legacy. Most notably, we are inspired by Gulotta et al. And their reflections on how interactive systems shape how we are remembered. The subject of digital legacy has led to explorations of virtual possessions and reminiscence. Here, one significant influence for this project are Odo Medal's technology albums, which explore the challenges of inheriting digital material and designing for experiences that evolve over extended periods. Like many of these projects, we adopt the philosophy of slow technology to explore metadata as a form of inheritable legacy, encouraging reflection and pause as a foundation for discovering the possibilities. The project applies research through design to explore how metadata could become part of legacy practices. The first challenge here was understanding and articulating personal metadata as a material to be designed with, and the second was understanding the practices, values, and meanings of inheriting a person's legacy. To learn how others understand legacy and the possibilities for metadata, we conducted qualitative interviews with 4 participants who had experiences with grief or prominent relationship to another's legacy. The participants were asked to consider legacy-related items in their life and describe their attachment to them, and reflect on various metadata probes. The interviews were recorded, transcribed, and thematically analyzed. Among the themes of legacy, the most evocative for the subsequent design process was reminiscence, closeness, investigation, and productive reading. Reminiscence concerning the attachment of memories to artifacts of legacy, closeness relating to the embodied presence of a person in their belongings, investigation as the curious ability for legacy artifacts to captivate people in exploration and wonder, finally productive reading as the imaginary scenarios we produce when looking and investigating artifacts of legacy. For metadata as a design material, the resulting themes revolved around exploring the potential physicality of metadata when manifested in other forms, the ability for the user to playfully filter and explore metadata, and the balance of disclosure and obscurity to achieve a sense of respectful distance when experiencing metadata. The design process began by exploring the first author's location history metadata extracted from Google Timeline and developing early concepts to explore the design space. Through this process, we developed a handheld device using a smartwatch that would react to location metadata based on the user's location. The idea of a personal meter to detect metadata was explored through our process. We sought for an experience where the user feels they were sensing rather than analyzing the traces around them. This led to the idea of the waveform as a more exploratory and convoluted way of conveying the presence of metadata. We continue to develop an understanding of the wave properties and how these could be manipulated according to different variables in the dataset. The device was then given form using 3D printed casing to contain the smartwatch. The device Anekdota took form as a handheld metadata detector. Anekdota's waveform would manipulate to express the shape of the metadata in the immediate surroundings, while haptic feedback in the device would signify changes in the data when the user moves between locations to draw their attention. Tying the concept back to our earlier themes, our assumptions were that Anekdota would emphasize metadata's physicality through the locative nature of the interaction. Similarly, the legacy theme of closeness is also present because the user is naturally drawn to places of meaning, that has a potential to cue experiences of connection and closeness to the other. Anekdota lends itself nicely to the exciting and exploratory themes of legacy. The convoluted experience does not provide instant knowledge, but invites the user to engage in sensing and observation of their surroundings to infer the meanings of places. In extension, playful filtering is manifested in the user's ability to navigate not only through space, but also time and see the metadata of places change across temporal variables. Our assumption is that Anekdota moves towards a more respectful distance to the other by emphasizing vagueness, uncertainty, and mystery. Participants were then invited to use and interpret Anekdota in subsequent metadata walk-alongs. The participants explored metadata on loosely guided tours around our city. We asked participants to think aloud while using the device to record their actions, and the walks were followed by an open-ended, semi-structured interview. The interviewees' interpretations of Anekdota were analyzed into a collection of evocative themes. Most notable here being experiencing data directly, where Anekdota offered a refreshing and stimulating approach to working with data, encouraging a deeper level of engagement and connection with the information. Voices from the data, where Anekdota created a sense of something living, blurring the lines between technology and humanity. And purposeful exploration, because Anekdota challenged participants to put together pieces of a puzzle and demanded their engagement in order to be useful. Our resulting contribution is sensitizing concepts that can be used to frame inquiry into designing for metadata. However, the user tests were based on location data that was not bequeathed to participants by somebody close to them, so we acknowledge that it's difficult to make strong claims about how Anekdota worked in terms of legacy. Therefore, we separate the contribution into sensitizing concepts for metadata, coupled with imaginary leaps that project how that metadata concept might be extended to legacy. Anekdota was found to be playful, engaging, and challenging. Participants enjoyed the feeling of investigation and solving mysteries by chasing obscure traces. Metadata as mysterious and trackable encouraged designers to emphasize these feelings of purpose, meaning, and importance that come from feeling on the path to greater discovery. In terms of legacy, we argue that the use of devices like Anekdota over a long period of time could lead to increase and interpretations of the metadata traces co-evolving with the user's identity. These experiences might encourage revisitation by offering different constraints, such as revealing different information over time as people change in age. It was observed that Anekdota created an intricate landscape that makes for a playful, spaceful, and formful manifestation of metadata. Metadata as present and purposeful encourages a shifting view of metadata as a residual trace to a design material that matters in contextually relevant ways in the places that they were created. For legacy, we propose that experiences like Anekdota can emphasize moments shared in the past between people, particularly childhood memories that are often fragmented and faded. Metadata experiences could allow users to reconnect with memories pertaining to people they have lost. They can reveal aspects of our behavior that we are unaware of. Finally, we argue that metadata could feel more ethical if those bequeathing their metadata has engaged with it. In extension, we also argue that metadata can shift from objective, truth-telling representations of data to telling stories, which invites our imagination to run wild. For legacy, we saw how Anekdota's approximate expression evoked curiosity and uncertainty about the non-knowledge it produces. The experiences emphasizes uncertainty and counters the myth of objectivity and truth that metadata represents. As a result, we suggest that the mode of metadata production can be made to be less functionalist and factual, echoing a call for narratives in data. In conclusion, we argue that when designing with metadata on its own or for legacy, we should not be afraid to reposition the data into more playful, imaginative, and silly narratives or modes of interaction that do not necessarily correlate with the reality or rationality of the situation. We believe that these concepts and their leaps offer strong paths towards designing with metadata, and more specifically towards designing with metadata for legacy. We hope that this process and our contributions can inspire future projects in both areas.